Stopped a little. Okay, we're learning B'schus Refuah Shlema Filana Chaya Basarach. We are on Daf Tes Amid Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Papa. Itoi Tana V'liyoda Prota Kamahave. So Tanoim, the way they used to identify when they would say a brisa, they would say what year they were in. They would date it from the Zman of the Churban. So that was the way they identified it. They'd say how many years it was since the Churban. But if it was a Tana doesn't mean a Tana from the Mishnah. It means someone who was learning, teaching Gemara. And he doesn't know how many years in order to be able to make that announcement. The Shaine L'Safra, he should ask the Seifrim, Kama Ksiv, what year they're writing. Now, again, the assumption is that everyone knows what century you are since the Churban Habayis. Or it's actually not the Churban Habayis. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. That's not accurate. It's from the third. There were three. The world was divided up into three 2,000-year sections. The first 2,000 of prior to Matan Torah, and then the two of 2,000 years of Torah, and then the 2,000 years of Yimei Mashiach. So the way they would say it is from the time of those 2,000 years, when the last 2,000 years started, they would say, because of our avoinus, how these are the years that we should have had Mashiach and we haven't had him. That was the way they would phrase it. Because as we're going to see later on, the 2,000 years are the year 4,000 from Bria Sa'ilam is actually 172 years after the Churban Habayis. So it's not, the two things are not equivalent. In any case, so when one of these an Amira wanted to say what year it was in, and he didn't know, he would ask a Sefer. And the Seferim went from, as we've said before, they went from when the Greeks, the Yevonim, went into power. So ask them, ask the Sefer, what years are you up to? And again, he's not saying how many centuries, because that he knows, but he's asking, what are the last two digits of the year? Which years in this current century are you up to? V'nitvi alayu arba'im v'tamni. And he'll add to it 48, umishkachlei l'chumra, and that will allow him to calculate what year he's up to. By adding 48, that will tell you how many years it is, or what year he is in from the year 4,000 from Bria Sa'ilam. Again, so the way we would get that is because we said before on the top of the Yamid that the Yevonim came into power 380 years before the Churban Habayis, and like we just said, there's a whole cheshbon of it, but the Churban Habayis was 172 years before the year 4,000. So if you add 172 to 380, you get 552. So if you're going to have 500, if you say this was the right?
Yeah.
So the Yevonim came into power 552 years before the year 4,000, before the fourth. So if you're going to know that let's say it's the year 48, let's say 1,000. Well, it's the year 1,048 from when the Yevonim went into power, since it's 552 years. I'm sorry. Let's say it's the year 1,002 from when the Yevonim came into power. If you add on 48 to that, then you'll know that it's the year 50 or some denomination of 50 it'll be actually, it's 500 years. We said it's 552, so it will be the year 1500 and 50 from, oh, I'm sorry, the other way around. It was 1,000, it'll be 550 from when the year 4000. It'll be 4,550. But the bottom line is, without getting into the centuries, the point is, since the ascension of the Yevonim was 552 years before the year
And the
4000, you will always be able to add 48 to that number, and you'll come to what the year is from the destruction. Mashrich le'lechumna. B'simonech, and the simon for this is Arba Mushmoina Ir. 48 cities. That there are 48 cities that are used for the Ir Miklat. So if you want to remember the number 48, you think about how many cities there are in the Ir Miklat. V'toi Safra, the other way around. Nishayla Latana Kamo. Latana Kama Katani. He'll ask Atana, how much is he using when he's learning? What year is he learning? He'll take away 48. And that will help him calculate his year. The simon is a cipher has to reduce by 48 in order to equal the Tana's number, and the Tana will add on 48 to equal the Safra's number. Amar Huna Breder of Yeshua. Hayman de Yada Kama Shani B'Shvua Hu Aimer. Anyone who doesn't know where he's up to in the Shemitah. That means the Shemitah was the Shemitah was abolished for a while after the first Beis Hamikdash, and it was reinstituted. When was it reinstituted? I think Rashi says in the year they started when they built the second Beis Hamikdash. So, how do you find it out? He doesn't know what year he's up to in the Shvuah, meaning in the Shemitah calculation. Nitfi Chad Shasa. So what he has to do is he adds one year to so he knows when he is, what year he's up to from after the Churban Abayis. He knows what year he is in Churban Abayis. So he adds 1 year to that because we know that there was Shemitah the year before that. So you have to add 1 in order to get in sync. So he adds 1 to the amount of years from the Churban. Nechshev klali b'yavli. Then he has to. This person doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how many yavels there are either. Now this Gemara is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that the yavel was I don't remember, was the first year of the Shemitah. I think it counted after 49 years you have a Yovel. That Yovel is also the first year of the next 7 years of Shemitah. It's counted as the first year. So you have only 6 years between the Yovel and the next Shemitah. So therefore, every 100 years only has 48. It has two Yovels plus 2 years. So by counting how many hundreds, each 100 years has 2 Yovel cycles plus another 2 years. So you have to figure out how many Yovels there are, how many 100 years which each contain 2 Yovels. Uprati b'shvuye, and you'll figure out how many looking at not the centuries, but the last two digits, which are the amount of years from which you're going to try to calculate the Shemitah. B'neshkol mimeya trey, but you have to take out two from every one of those centuries, because we're going like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that there's only 49 years, a total of 49 years in the Yovel cycle. So you're going to be missing 2 years from every century. So you take two from every 100 years. V'nishti prati, you add it to the amount of leftover year. Let's say it was 330 years. So you're going to take from the 300, you take two from each one of
330 years after the Churban, you said.
right. So
Right.
well, yeah, and if
Because
it's
that he
330
does
years
know.
after the Churban, you have to add one. So first you add one, right? Because we said it's really the year before the Churban. So that gets you to 331. Then you take the 300 and you times it. You take two for every 100, so you take 6. You add the 6 to the extra 31, which gets you to 37, and then you divide that by 7. And that will tell you what year of the Shemitah you're up to. So if it's 37, so that means 7 goes into 37 5 times, and you have another 2 years left. So you're in the second year of the Shvuah, of the Shemitah, and in 5 years it's going to be Shemitah again. That's the calculation. The siman for taking off 2 years from every 100 years to accommodate with the fact that there are 2 additional years besides the Yavels. In every 100 years, Ishnosayim, the pasuk refers to the 2 years of starvation. It's a mnemonic to remind us that you take off 2 years. B'kerev Aretz. B'kerev Aretz, which is obviously a reference, which will remind us that we're talking about Shemitah. Amar Chanina, Acha Arba Meis L'Churban Habayis, 400 years after the Churban Habayis. Im Yoim L'Cha Adam Kach Sade Shava Elef Dinrim B'Diner Echad Loitikach. Rav Chanina was very certain. There's a lot of different pshatim in this. This is obviously it's a very controversial stance that he took. He said that the Mashiach is certainly going to come 400 years after the Churban Habayis, which, like we said, the Churban Habayis was 172 years prior to the year 4000, the Yemei HaMashiach. So he felt he had some cheshbon that 228 years later was definitely, the Mashiach is definitely going to come. And if someone would offer you to buy a piece of property at a massive discount where it's worth 1,000 and you're going to buy it for one dinner, it's not worth it because everyone's going to Eretz Yisrael and it's going to be worthless. Tana, but I'm sorry. Masisa Tana, Achar Aboim Alofim Umasayim Ushloishim Vi'acha Shana Lebrias Ha'olam Imem L'cha Adam Kach Lasada Shav Elav Dinner Mediner Echad Al Tikach. You have a different Manda Amar who says after 4,231 years from Brias Ha'olam. So that's 3 years later than Rav Chanina had said. Rav Chanina had said 400 years from the Churban. The Churban, like we said, was 172, so it's 228, and they're saying 231, 4,231. Al tikach, you shouldn't take it. My benayu, tznashlin. Difference between them is 3 years. This other man, Amar, came to a cheshbon of however he calculated when Mashiach is going to come, and this goes to show you this is a old minhag by the Yidden to predict that their time is always the worst that it's ever been, and there's no way that Mashiach is not coming very soon. We all think that it's clear this is crazy times, but it's been like that for many thousands of years. Masnisa Tav Yitzlashni. because in the Brisa, the Brisa has a 3 years more, 3 years later than Rav Chanina. Haushtara, there was a shtar there, Sivbei Shis Shnin Yisert. It had on it, it was written, let's say it was 2025, and it said on it that it says a loan was given from Reuben to Shimon in 2031, and it's now 2025, so it's 6 years later than the current year. The Talmidim in front of Rav wanted to say it's a shtar ma'ocher. Occasionally, it's rare, but occasionally a lender will want to improve the position of the borrower, and he'll lend money, and he'll say, I'm going to post date the shtar, and thereby make it that you can't collect from anyone that, if the loiva had sold his property, that property will not be beshubed till the date on the shtar. So by post dating the check, the lender gives an advantage that the lien doesn't start till the date on the shtar. Then the lender wanted to do nice to the borrower. The lender wanted to wanted to be advantageous for the lender. The akva the match is money tarf. So therefore we should assume it's a shtar mocher and follow as the lender had intended, not to be goyve till then. Amrav Nachman, Hai Safra Dukna. He said, no, this is a cipher that's very meduyak. Dukna Kasve. He wrote it specifically. If you remember before, we had said that even though we said 380 years before, we got into a little bit of a contradiction because we say the Malchei Pras were there 24 years, but then we said that the Yevonim came into power 380 years before the Churban. So we answered that by saying that there was 6 years that the Yevonim were in Elam that were not counted when we were counting from when the Yevonim went into power. So this cipher added those 6 years in. He was a stickler. He said, I don't care what everyone else is doing. I know that that's when the Yevonim really went into power. Who we don't count those 6 years. Who kachashavle? Ubizmane kasve. The shtar was really written with the current time. It really means to be 2025, but he just counted it from 6 years prior. He used the Zman, he said 2,000 or however many thousands of years it is from the Zman of the true ascension of the Greeks. The Tanya B'Yesi says that they first were in Elam for 6 years and then they spread out from there. Maskeflor of Acha Bar Yaakov. Mimayde lemalchus Yevonim minyanim. Dilma Yitzias Usai minyanim. B'shavke le'alfa kama. The cheshbon is that the Yitzias Mitzrayim was exactly 1,000 years before the Yevonim came into power. We know that the first Beis HaMikdash was built 480 years after Yitzias Mitzrayim, and it was there for it stood for 410 years, right? So that's 480 plus 410 is 890. Then you have the 70 years between the two Beis HaMikdash. So that gets you to 940, right? 960, I'm sorry. So 960. Add to that the 420 years of the second Beis HaMikdash, gets you to 1,380. we know, like we said before, that the Yavanim came into power 380 years before the Churban Habayis, the second bias. So subtracting 380 from 1,380 gets you to 1,000. So the Yavanim came into power exactly 1,000 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim. So he's saying maybe this person, this cipher, was counting from Yetzias Mitzrayim, but he wasn't putting in. I think it means we're talking about within the next 1,000 years. So he's saying he just didn't put the 1,000 years. So it was really like 1,050 years or 1,560 years from Yetzias Mitzrayim, but he just didn't put in the 1,000. He left out that first digit. Like very often you'll when you put down your date of birth, you do 7. For me, it's 71. You don't always put in 1971. So he left off the 1,000. So V'shavke alpha kama v'nakta alpha basra, he just used the current century. V'hai but if you're doing that cheshbon, it's not going with the 6 years of the Elam. It's going from when the later calculation, the calculation 380 years before the Churban, not the 386 years before the Churban. So then this is, if he's doing it from Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's taka a shtar ma'ocho. Rav Nachman, begoyle ein meinen el malchi Yavanim bolvad. Says no, there's no such thing as calculating from Mitzrayim, even though it was 1,000 years before. Nobody does that. Hu sava dichu kamatchile. He thought that he was just being deicha him by coming up with this rule that we only go with the Malcha Yavanim. Navik dak va'ashkach, but he went and he looked and he found that Tanya begoyle ein meinen el malchi Yavanim bolvad. We have a brisa that says that we only use the Malcha Yavanim to calculate. Amar Avina, Masisa Nami Deka. It's also mashma like that from our Mishnah. It's not. Be'echad ben Nisan. This is the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. Be'echad ben Nisan Rosh Hashanah l'malachim u'l'regalim. We say Be'echad ben Nisan is Rosh Hashanah for malachim and for regalim. Regalim we said is l'gabe the biarti hakadosh, that you have to be mevar, you have to take out all of the kachim that you had promised, you had been menadiv before 3 regalim have passed. So you start that from Nisan, from Pesach, the 3 regalim. And l'malachim, v'amrinan, l'malachim l'mayhil. So what is malachim relevant for? Amar Chizda, l'shtaris, l'gabi, what year a king's reign is counted from. So his first year ends always in Nisan. L'tnan, be'echad b'tishrei Roshana l'shanim u'l'shmitim. We say Rosh Hashanah l'gabi Shemitah, that we know, right? That's when Shemitah starts on Rosh Hashanah. And l'shanim, from l'shanim ma'achasav amrav chiz l'shtaris. He also says it's shtaris. Kasha shtaris adadi. We said that the first shanim we said malachim means shtaris, and then we said shanim means shtaris, and when we said Nisan, and when we said Tishrei. Mashina kan l'malchei Yisrael, kan l'malchei ovdei kechavim. So he said, he was mechalik, that it depends on that when we said that it was Nisan, that's talking about Malchei Yisrael, and Malchei Ovdei Kechavim is from Tishrei. Mitishrei minyan I'm sorry. Ovdei Kechavim mitishrei minyan Malchei Yisrael minisan minyan. Banan hashta mitishrei minyan. And now we go from Tishrei. So we see that we follow the Ovdei Kechavim. Visagdat leitzias v'tzrayim minyan minisan binan l'mimdi. Allah shaminah l'malchei Yavanim minyan shma minah. So it's not just that he has he made up this thing in order to answer the question, but really it's true that we really count from the Yavanim. V'yayim ginusein ginuseh shel malchei. This is the day of ginusa of malchut. We said in the Mishnah that one of the holidays that the Goyim are oved avodas kechavim for is the ginuseh shel malchei. My v'yam ginuseh shel malchei. When Yehuda yom shemambidim b'yavdei kechavim es malchim. This is the day of the inauguration day, January 20th. V'atanya yom ginuseh v'yam shemambidim b'yes malchim. But we have a brisa that counts as 2 separate things. One is yom ginuseh, and the other one is when they were inaugurated. Like kasha, hadidei hadabrei. One is when the actual king is coronated, and the second one is when he coronates his son. Sometimes, if you ever see in a yeshiva, sometimes the Rosh Hashiva will step back a little, just to start saying Shir Klali, and his son will start saying the daily Shir. He wants to move him into position. So that's what the kings would do also, the emperors. They'd put his son into position of power so he'll be ready to take over. This is talking about Rome, and this is all is b'shas the Romans. The Romans had a senate. They had officially they had dictators, but they were dictators who seized power. Really, was supposed to be elected leaders. Do you really elect a son? Ba'atani Rav Yosef, hine katan haticha b'goyim she'em moshiven melech ben melech. He said that this is the Rebbe, that the Rebbe said that the pasuk says that this pasuk is where in Avoda. Hinikatan ata nesaticha b'goyim bazi ata ma'od, and this is a reference to Rome, that they're not as powerful as other nations, that they don't have a hereditary descent. That was considered a power that someone was able to appoint his sons, and the Romans were not able to. Bazi atamoid she'en lehem like savalei lashon. Another the bizayin for them was that they don't have a ksav or a lashon. Rashi says that means that they took their lashon, they took their language from others. Taisus objects to that because he says every language comes from someone else. So he said, what did Taisus say? No. By the Lashon Malchus come. Why do you make them a gracious rabbi? The B'dor HaFlaga Allah Yam. Where did he say? He said a pshat. He said there are certain royal languages, right? In Europe, everyone used to speak French. That was the language of royalty. So he said the Romans did not have a royal language. They used the common languages. So that's Bazi Moed. Elamai Yom Genusah. What is Yom Genusah? Yom Haleda. That's the birthday of the king. But we have another brayz that says counts both Yom Genusa and Yom Haleda. Like Asha, Hadi Day, Hadi Bread. One is his birthday, and the other one is his son's birthday. Vatan Yom Genusa Shaloi, Yom Genusa Shal B'noi, Yom Haleda Shaloi, Yom Haleda Shal B'noi. Elamai, so it can't be Yom Haleda. Elamai Yom Genusa Yom Shamidamei Malkum. We're going back to the first pshat. It's a day of coronation. Like Asha, Hadi Day, Hadi Bread. One is him and one is his son. We asked before that they don't appoint a son. He could request. He could go to the Senate and say, I would suggest that you appoint my son in my place. And if you don't do so, you'll find yourself with a severe lack of breathing. Kagoin Azavirus bar Antoninus, the Malach, that he made him king. Amalei, how did he make him king? Amalei Antoninus Rav. Bina the Yimlech Asavirus Berei Tachusi. I want to put my son in my place. The Ta'avet Tveria Kalanya. And I also wanted to make Tveria a tax-free zone. He had these two priorities. The Ema Lahu Chada Avdi Trele Avdi. I can't do both of these things. I can't both make my son the king in my place, and I can't make Tveria into a tax-free zone. Now, making Tveria tax-free was a good thing because that's where the Chachamim were. He wanted to benefit them. So he asked Rebbe, how should he do it? I see Gavra, so he said to him, I see Gavra Arkave Achavre. You take one man, you put him on top of another man. You put a dove in the hand of the one who's on the shoulders of the other man. And tell the one on the bottom to tell the one on top to free the bird. He was basically making a mashal. Amar shma mina hachi kamle. Ad boy minayu das virsbri yimlich tachusi. He's saying you should. Rabbi was telling Antoninus, have them first tell them to appoint your son, and that's the same thing as putting someone on top. when someone's on top, he can tell the other person what the person on bottom what to do. So then the Eimele Las Virus the Tavet Tveri Kalanya. Then Asvirus will be able to tell them, he'll have his one request and he'll tell them to make Tveria not have to pay taxes. Okay, we're going to stop over here. And I'll see you guys Shem Matzah Shabbos.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Have a
Have a
great
good Shabbat.